but usually it's Don that's doing the introductions. But since Don Miller is actually speaking tonight, I'll do the honors. Don Miller is our program chair for Audubon, and does a wonderful job of finding people that can speak about a variety of topics. And he brought this topic up several weeks ago, and I think there was unanimous approval on the board. Everybody wanted to hear about it. So we're going to let him speak about the issue about the Isle Royale National Park. Don is also a volunteer with the Natural Land Institute. Even though he looks young, he's retired. Spent 30 years working for as the director of the Severson Dells, and he's lived in Northern Illinois his entire life, and loves the area. There's so many opportunities, he says, of hiking and canoeing and things like that he enjoys doing, and spending time and teaching his 4 grandkids. All of the grandkids are under 7 years, so I'm sure they have great stories of spending time with Grandpa. We'd like to hear some of those. Like I said, he's the program director for Northwest Illinois Audubon. He's been doing that for almost 2 years now, and I think we make it a lifetime position for him. He's done such a good job. So I'm going to mute myself so you guys don't have to listen to me anymore, and then you can. I'll just turn it over to you, Don, and take it from there.
Oh, thank you, Gary. I appreciate everybody showing up tonight. And in a way, it's a travel log kind of program, and I find people that are here are people that maybe have been to Isle Royale, or people that would like to go to Isle Royale, or maybe just want to find out about it. And how about give them a wave if you've been up there? Well, I can't see everybody here. So I don't know if anybody's waving or not. But part of the program, I think, is maybe a travel guide to invite you to go up and see this beautiful place, because there is really something for everybody as far as how you like to camp or stay in a hotel, or whether you want a backpack or whether you want a boat. There's a little bit of something for everybody. And to get up to the Keweenaw Island, we're one of the kickoff spots that we'll talk about to get to the island. It's a seven-hour drive to get up there. Isle Royale was a national park in 1940 is when it was designated. Before then, it had multiple disasters with private people trying to make hotels and lodges and stuff up there, and it never really worked. The Native Americans called the island Manung after a mythical sea lynx that was supposedly up there. And some people the Manung is supposed to mean place of great copper, that the natives would go up there to get copper. And certainly that was one of the historical things that did happen to Isle Royale, that copper was found there. Not already. Okay, I'm hitting enter. Gary, help me.
What's the matter?
There we go. It wasn't advancing.
Okay.
So where is Isle Royale at? And you can see on this slide that Keweenaw Peninsula is that little finger that sticks out of the upper peninsula of Michigan. And across the way is Grand Portage, Minnesota. And that's you can see Grand Marais down there for you Boundary Waters people that are going up on the Gunflint Trail. And then south of that, a couple hours, is Duluth. And across the way is Canada. And there was a great tug of war about who should have Isle Royale, whether it's Canada or whether it's a US. And fortunately for us, it's under, I think fortunately for us, it's under our guidance. 2011 was the first time that I had a chance or took the chance to go up there, and I went up there with 5 or 4 other guys, and we drove up to Grand Portage, Minnesota, And you can see there's a couple of different ways you can get out there. One is called the Voyager 2, which takes you about 2 hours. And there's another one, Sea Hunter 3, that the boat that goes a little bit faster. And we took the slow boat, so to speak, and I'll tell you more about that. There, from Houghton, there's a couple opportunities from seaplanes and another ferry boat called the Ranger 3. As you can see, it takes 6 hours to cross to get there. That was too long a time for me to be on a boat out in the middle of nowhere. So the other 2 times we went up there, we went all the way up to the tip of the Keweenaw Island at Copper Harbor and took the Isle Royal Queen 4 ferry, which takes approximately 3.5 hours to get there. Pricing, and this is where it hits you a little bit. To take the ferry out of Copper Harbor round trip is $240. To fly out there, and you get out there in a matter of less than a half an hour, I think it's like $350 last time I looked. So there's a little expense going out there, but once you're out there, if you're an aged senior like I am and you have your national park pass, it's free. Otherwise, it's $7 a night to camp there. I guess the way we're working this tonight, you know, if you have questions, write them in the chat or remember them. And if you have stories of you being up there, I'd like to hear those when we're done as well. These are both pictures of Isle Royal. The top picture, you can kind of get an idea of the trails. The western or the left end is the Wendigo end. And that's where the boat that comes from Minnesota, and that's a good 10-hour plus drive to get up there to take the boat. But then you only have 2 hours across the Lake Superior to get where you're going. And again, as I said, that's where we went the first year. The second year, we went to the east end of the island, called Rock Harbor. And we'll see there that there's actually a store, there's a hotel, there's a little restaurant, and it's the developed part, the non-wilderness part. And I show you the bottom map just to give the topography. There's one main ridge they call the Greenstone Ridge that runs the length of the island, 40 miles. And 10, 14, 15 miles wide, depending on where you're at on the island, is how wide it is, 14 by 15 miles. And so then they have this intricate trail system throughout. I'm going to say that by pictures, you'll see that the west end of this was, to me, a little more wild, but the whole island together is just so scenic. And you can also, many people take kayaks up there or rent kayaks, and you can circumnavigate around, but it's really tricky. So they say it's hard to plan because there's some days you just can't be on Lake Superior in any kind of boat for that matter, but especially a kayak or canoe. This is the man crew that we took, and there's 5 of us. Decided it's something we do. The guy on my right is my son. Any other guys are just friends. And you know, if you've gone camping or any kind of adventure with people, you're not all like-minded. We had a couple that are you know, marathon runners and weightlifters, and their backpacking skills was to go from point A to point B as fast as they possibly could. You know, it was more of that endurance kind of thing. And then myself and the guy on the right, Tim Gruner, is the head gardener at the Anderson Gardens. So we were stopping every 5 feet because the botany was so spectacular. We all figured out where we wanted to end up. So at the end of the day, we end up there. Some of us got there in 4 or 5 hours, and some of it was 8, 9 hours, but it was all okay. So this is the Voyager 2. This is the boat that goes out of Minnesota over to the island. You can see the size of it. It's nicknamed the Puker. It's a small boat, and on big waves, I could see where you could really be rocked. The inside is almost like a little, you know, down stairs, like almost like a bus kind of feel to it. You could also then go outside and view the island as it came and see the Lake Superior, which was fun to do too. We were pretty lucky. You can see this is late June, but we were dressed in pretty warm clothes and stocking caps on the boat. And we were told how lucky we are that this is how flat the water was. And I'm going to say I'm glad we were lucky, because it still had this undulating flow to the boat as we headed our 2 hours there. And I'm going to say I was glad when we got off the boat. A unique thing about the boat, as you're looking around inside, they have all kinds of pictures of ships crashing and shipwrecks, and all around, because of the way Lake Superior is shallow and coming into Minnesota, there's been countless numbers of shipwrecks in that area. And they have pictures of them and they put them on the wall. And one of my buddies is an engineer and works on airplanes with Boeing. And he says, it's a little odd when you go to an airport, they don't have pictures of like airplane crashes all around. It makes you kind of nervous. And the captain overheard him say that. And he says, I'll have you know that none of these are our ships. And I guess that made us feel better. So you get there and you get all your equipment, you go into Forest Ranger's office, and you give them a rough idea of what your trails are going to be like. There's a couple cabins at this Wendigo place that you can reserve, but otherwise it's kind of a first come, first serve. And they do not encourage you to camp just anywhere you want. They have like these campground gatherings. So you can walk on the trails and you're only going to most of the time see your own group. But when you get to these campgrounds, they'll camp. There's places, maybe some depends on the campground, 5 to 10 campsites for tents. And then you'll see they might have 3 or 4 of these buildings, kind of like an Appalachian building to sleep in. So we got our permits and went out in a deluge. It just poured, and it poured for the next 6 hours on us. And I remember this is when I was working, and people say, so you get a week's off vacation, and what you do is put 40 pounds on your back and go walk out in rainstorms? That sounds like a lot of fun, Don. And so we got to our first, after 6 hours, we got to our first where we're supposed to camp. And it was just one massive puddle, and it was still raining. And at this time it was like 5, 6 o'clock. So we still had a couple hours of daylight. And so we all decided, you know what, we don't want to set up in this mud bath. And we all had enough energy. The next camp area was 5 miles away. And so we thought we'd take our chance that would be a better spot. So we went past our first site. And this is what the trails, this is when it started to let up a little bit. This is what the trails will look like. And they have leave no trace, they want the place to look exactly how it looked before you got there. And one of the things which I think is interesting is, they say we don't want the trails to keep getting wider. So please, if there's puddles, walk in the puddles. If it's muddy, walk in the mud puddles. And so very few people made the trails wider. The tracks go right through the mud, where I've been lots of places, and maybe guilty of this myself sometimes, is when it's really soupy and muddy, I take a 10-foot detour around the mud. But pretty much people stay to the trail. There's the rain, there's a lot of inland lakes, and that's how much rain we got that night. And I haven't told you, the mosquitoes were somewhat ferocious. And mosquitoes generally don't bother me very much, but I'm going to say this first day in between, really when it rained hard and it got kind of humid and muggy, the mosquitoes could have carried you away. The next 2 visits that I made, we didn't have any bugs at all. Black flies, gnats, biting gnats, nothing. So the first day we put 11 miles on, and we certainly didn't intend to put that many miles on. And we got to this nice bay, and it was foggy, but it wasn't raining. And we were pretty excited because nobody else was there, and we got actually to see the sun set. And so it was setting as we got there. So you have to filter your water. They presently, because of these warm conditions, 2 of their inland lakes have that blue-green algae, which is very dangerous, and you can't filter that. But all the 3 times I've been there, that's not been an issue about where you get your water. So we divvy up the jobs, so everybody's doing something, getting ready. And that's what one of these cabins look like. And inside, there's nice screen, and they really keep it up well so the bugs can't get in there. And so it was a good place to escape the bugs. Inside, because it did start raining again, you can see that it's just a wood floor. Some pretty classic graffiti is on the walls, which we thought we really should take field notes on the graffiti. And it wasn't negative or bad graffiti. It was usually nature related, and I'm going to say kind of funny. Now you can see these aren't very big, and there's six of us guys in there, and so you stretch out your sleeping bag and on your pad. And my son is a horrible snorer, just a horrible snorer. And of course, it's always those people that can fall asleep in 5 minutes. And the looks I got when my son conked out and started snoring, it wasn't pleasant. But we're all tired enough that we got a good night's sleep that first night. Whatever that is what we had for supper. There are better cooks in the backcountry than what I am. Let's leave it at that. And, the map thing, I always think is one of the highlights and being fun in areas like this, where trying to figure out where you're at, keeping track of where you're at, knowing where you're at the trail, knowing what pace you are, knowing what's coming up and so forth. And there's a couple other guys on this trip too that we love getting the maps out and just figuring all that kind of stuff out. On the ridges, this is June, and this is like this drop seed and mix of switchgrass. And certain part of these ridges, and to me, that was one of the captivating things of Isle Royale, is you have these like kind of, I'm not sure that it's a prairie, like a barren's prairie. You have spruce forest, you have bogs, you have maple forest, you have the coastline. And so the variety of habitat and the amount of plants that you can find there is just, to me, was mind-blowing. And probably one of the reasons that it gets me going back as often as I have. It was 90 degrees one day, and if you've been on a big open barren in your top like that, we weren't quite ready for the heat. So I think that was the 3rd day. It was just scorching. And so we all adapted our gear, because the mosquitoes were still out the beginning of that day. But my friend John was the fashion model here. And you're getting the view as we dropped a little bit off the ridge, the view of Lake Superior and the size of the packs that we took. And we did a pretty good job. You always argue about who's got 5 more pounds than the other guy, because there's a lot of equipment that you need to share, but you only need 1 or 2 of something instead of everybody having something. But I think for the most part, we did pretty well on our packing. And again, the anticipation of going on trips like this is not as good, but certainly a fun part of the trip is looking forward to it, planning, talking about it. And one of the highest parts, they have this fire tower, and you can climb up on top and get a view. And it's a little foggy in the distance, but that's Canada over on that side, and Minnesota over that direction. And Isle Royale is the biggest island in a freshwater lake in the world. And then they've got another big freshwater lake on Isle Royale, that there's another island that they claim is the biggest island on the lake that's on an island in the biggest lake. Some nonsense like that. They claim that Isle Royale, and maybe even in my write-up I said it's the least visited national park in the system, but the most percentage-wise revisited. And so I was doing a little fact checking before the presentation, and I found that actually it's the 5th most or least visited park. There's like 4 or 3 of them up in Alaska that aren't as visited as often as this is, and there's one in Samoa that's not as well visited. But still, it is, people that go there tend to go back. You'll probably see too many of these pictures tonight, but the views when you're up on that greenstone ridge, you can just see forever. And you know, it is a wilderness area, so you're not seeing, you know, there I just showed you a fire tower, but beautiful, beautiful vistas. Look at that greenery, the spruces down there. And the floor display is amazing. Some places on the forest floor, you know, there's, you feel bad, even if on your trail, sometimes you're stepping on some of these plants, and this is twin flowers, the one that's actually blooming, and there's wintergreen in there. The white is the reindeer lichen, the Solomon seal. I don't know what all else is in that picture, but it's a whole bunch of good stuff. And I've always enjoyed going to northern Wisconsin in the areas, and Isle Royale has many of the some plants that the northern Wisconsin true forest has, and the club moss there you can see, and a bunch berries. You can see why, if you're into botany, you stop and you got to look, and you got to put on your knees. And if you're a power walker, you walk right on by all this beautiful stuff. And that's the reindeer lichen. And I don't know much about it, but I know it's very fragile. And in places we saw quite a bit of it. And it's usually on that greenstone rock. And maybe Steve, after we're done here, can give a little geology lesson about the rocks that are up there, if I'm not putting him on the spot too much. Thimbleberry, all 3 times the Thimbleberry wasn't ready. It gets, if you've ever had Thimbleberry, it's like a red raspberry cut in half. Like to me, it's like the shape of an acorn top, but very edible and very good. And it wasn't everywhere that it should be up there. I just spaced out on the name of this one. I have northern starflower. Very delicate, very beautiful, and there were some patches of that 10 by 10. Coral root, which is a parasitic plant. There was the blue flag iris. And then I think later on I put this lakeside iris in there. That's beautiful. Again, the Clatonia, or I don't know, there's some other, lots of names for that yellow one, cream yellow one in the middle. Bunchberries all around. All you know, rattlesnake, plantain, and orchid. I can't tell you how many species of orchids up there. I bet there's 15, and later on the show, we'll show you some of the other ones that we did run across. How about right now? Yeah, the pink lady slippers. We saw probably 3 or 4 groups of them with 15, 16 blooming spots on the plant. It was amazing. Not a good picture of the Indian pipe, but there's all kinds of great fungus. soil moist up there, all kinds of strange colors. I still use an Olympic camera that doesn't have near the pixels that most people's cell phones do, but it's one I can drop in the water. It's one I can drop from 5 feet on rocks. But I never use it enough to be really good at it. And I really should invest in a good cell phone so I have a camera. And I wouldn't have shots like this. To me, this is a typical rock beach around Lake Superior. And we came across this place. It's like 2 miles from a place that we camped, and we're there a little early, so we decided we'd go out on an evening hike and came across this spot. And after, this is the PG rating that, there is nobody around there. Lake Superior is very cold, but all day long it's warming these rocks. And so after you've been carrying a backpack for a while and been hiking, I'm going to tell you, it was like a spa. The warmth off these rocks just felt tremendous. People were yelling whale on the beach, just so you know, when this picture was taken. They think they're funny. So there are spots that, like, warmer creek water does come into the ocean, the Lake Superior, and we found them to be very enjoyable. Again, a PG shot of this, and they're the right temperature. And there's a spot where it was like a chute that you could almost body surf out to the Lake Superior. And we noticed the moon rising as well. So we took the 2 mile hike back to the camp, ate a quick supper, and decided we wanted to return to this spot to see the sunset. It was west facing on the island. Thought it'd be a good spot for that, and to see what happened to the moon while we were there. And so sunset on Lake Superior are hard to match, although we've had some really nice sunsets around here as well. So we enjoyed the sunset, took the classic picture of the shadows. We look like we are all 6'9" there. The sky turned this amazing color. And the moon came out, and it was just an amazing night. That just the beauty of somebody taking some pictures like this is I can set myself right back on that beach in that night, and the solitude, the quietness, with people that you enjoy, and you're seeing something that you probably aren't ever going to see again in the rest of your life. So we hung out there quite a long time. We said, we got to get up and hike another 6 miles tomorrow, or we better get back to bed. So it was a 2 mile hike, and it was really dark. We all had headlamps, and we stayed all 10 feet away from each other. And about halfway home, somebody had heard something, and they shined their lights over into the woods, and there were 5 sets of these reflective lights. And about 4 of the pairs were probably about 5 feet off the ground or 6 feet off the ground. And one was about 3.5 feet off the ground. And they were all staring at us. And we particularly didn't like them staring at us. And I'm sure they liked us out tromping around in their area. And so we moved right along, and they made some noises. And I personally was glad that we got home but that was our first encounter with moose. And all we saw was a reflection in their eyes. Not quite full, but very nice. So we did have tents that we slept in pairs, and if you can find those houses, it's just easier to throw your sleeping bag in there and sleep in there. But a couple of nights, if not 3 of the 6, we slept in tents. And 5:30 sunrise, my son hears this noise, something going into the water. So we got up, and there was this big guy, 30 feet outside of our tent. and posed pretty nice. My son got this picture. Why it's better than the ones I take. And he walked right in front of us. It was just a beautiful animal. And that's another reason that I go back there is I think the moose is such a grand animal. And then it started swimming across the lake. And there is a video, but with me and technology, I didn't want to get into showing the video, but there is a video of this whole progression as it swims away. But then it either got deeper than it wanted to get or it didn't want to swim as far as it originally wanted to, and it got out. So there's the back end of the moose, just in case you've never ever seen a back end of a moose. All right, so let's get the maps out. And sometimes there are options of where you can go and the length that you're doing. And it's always fun to try to figure out to explore new habitat. It's not all that drop seed and prairie stuff. In some places it gets very lush. A high number of different kinds of ferns grow up there. It gets very lush in the wooded areas. Some pretty amazing trees. Like I say, there's birch and there's mountain maples and balsam fir, mountain ash, all kinds of junipers. In places where it's boggy, they have these walkways to walk across, and you can see we're getting a little careless about how we're packing our stuff. And sometimes, if you're not very balanced, it's an easy thing to go knee deep in a bog somewhere. But these bogs are full of wonderful plants like sundews, and I think I'll surprise you with some other ones later in the show. Marsh milkweeds and skunk cabbage. And then when you get close to the shore, you got all these tremendous rock outcrops and right on the lakes. And some of the days the waves are just pounding these things, and which was really cool. But other days it was quiet and calm. We just spent some time out there. These white admirals were everywhere, and they loved like our hackberries around here do. Whether it's the salt minerals, whatever, from our perspiration, they love to land on your face and in your hands. And at this point, the mosquitoes had disappeared, so nobody was having insect spray on their hands. I took this picture of a buddy. It's a damn hat, autographed by Katie Lee, who was a lady that we had come to Severson that I got to spend some time with, and then I actually went and visited her in Arizona, who ran with Ed Abbey and wrote very nice about the Glen Canyon Dam, and was just a character. And, when I saw this slide as I was going through, and I'm thinking, that reminds me of Katie. She's passed on now. And then some of them aren't those big flat rots. It looks like right here you could be in the northwest coast of Washington or Oregon. In the bays, it's perfect for skipping. So we had the skipping contest. A lot of great flat rocks. And this is a campsite in this little bay, and it's the only campsite for a couple miles. And someday I will go back there. It wasn't on this adventure that we got to spend there. And it's probably more of a 2 or 4 person than a 6-person campsite. Quiet waters, beautiful, quiet area. And it didn't look very well used. They've had storms up there, so sometimes there's obstacles that you gotta watch. And again, there's so many things up there that I really hadn't seen. And this is like a lungwort. It's a lichen. I'm going to check my notes so I can get it right for you. A tree lungwort lichen. And that was another beautiful thing up there. There are lots of birds, and again, you're listening, and I wish I was better with identifying birds by ear. Occasionally we would get a bird close enough and quiet enough and not afraid of us that we get a shot of this beautiful osprey, mergansers, there's pileateds up there, all kinds of warblers. And so, you know, binoculars is usually one of those first things when I start. I'm overweight with my pack. My binoculars don't get to go backpacking with me. The only sign of wolf was this dried up old scat. And this is the only picture that either a friend or my wife or I didn't take of the wolf. And the other thing about Isle Royale, it's the longest predator-prey research has been going on there, Rolf Peterson, and I think it's like since 1959. So, you know, more than 60 years, they've been studying this balance between wolves and moose. And I told Gary ahead of time is I'm not as well versed on this as I would like to be or should be to be doing a program on it. So I am going to refer you to the Isle Royale or the Michigan Tech professors are doing the study. Excuse me. And there is just fascinating to read because you know it's a balance. So something we're taught when we're little about the balance of nature, and it's based on population and food available. And the highest number of wolves that have ever been at Isle Royale was 50. And unfortunately, some hiker brought their dog out there, so that parvovirus decimated the wolves, which made the moose population go sky high. And I've got the numbers here that said it was in 1950 or 1980, excuse me, when they had 50 wolves and the population crashed. And by 1996, there was 2,400 moose because the wolf population wasn't there to trim the herd. But then what happened to the moose is there's a major tick breakout. Now, I'm a tick magnet. If there's a tick, I'm going to get the tick, but it's not a tick that it prefers the moose population and not humans. I've never had a tick up there in the 3 weeks that I've spent up there. But the tick doesn't kill the moose. What it does is the moose scratches on trees and scratches and scratches and scratches all its fur off. And some of these things are just horrible to look at. They're so bald. But then when winter comes, they don't have the protection that they need to survive the cold up there. So then the moose population crashed. But it came back, and the browse without any wolves, the browse that was going on up there was astronomical. And the population here not more than 5 or 6 years ago, and if Richard's involved, I'd rather have him tell the story. But there's 2 wolves which were non-mating pairs. So the wolves were going to disappear off the island, which meant chaos for the island as far as habitat is concerned, with the moose population and eating everything out of house and home. Being that it's a wilderness, you're not supposed to, you know, human impact. It's not supposed to happen on wilderness areas. So there was a lengthy debate on both sides whether they should introduce wolves or whether they should let, quote, nature take its course and whatever happens, happens. Well, eventually, the wolf biologists, I think, really were advocates of reintroducing. They got wolves from Canada, Minnesota, Michigan, and they're going to introduce, I think, 20 or 30 over the next couple of years, and I think it's like 16 have been introduced 3 years ago, and there are now pups from these wolves that they've taken up there, and so the reintroduction has been a success. They're starting to control the moose population. There's a great opportunity if you want to spend a week up there. They have what they call the Moose Watch, which is a group of volunteers that spend a week traveling through the park looking for moose kills. Some of them have collars, and so you're tracking the dead moose and collecting bones and teeth and so forth, and you're part of the research is what you are. And I always thought that'd be kind of a fun thing to be a part of. They're also finding that the wolves, first when they were there, beavers are easier to catch than the moose. So there's a little concern about, you know, what's going to happen to the beaver population if the wolves eat too many of them and not focus on the moose population. Interesting stuff, I think. There's also a great movie, documentary out there on the wolves of Isle Royale. So that was the first time we got on the island on the west end, Wendigo. The other two times, the one time I went with my son, together we walked, and the last time, a couple of years ago, I went with my wife, Sue. And there were two different kinds of hike that we went on to. And I kind of explained that when I talked at the very beginning that there's something for everybody. And I'll tell you how my son and I hiked and then how my wife and I hiked. So this is the ferry that comes out of the Copper Harbor area. It's a bigger boat and the ride is pretty smooth, but the captain said, you know, sometimes there's 7-foot waves and it rocks the boat. And our way back, there were big waves and, you know, some people get sick, and with me watching people other get sick makes me get sick. So I used every little ounce of brain power I had to focus on something else to get home. I'm not trying to discourage you on this, but some motion sickness tablet, I would say, would be a good thing to have if you have problems. So as you come into the Rock Harbor area, this is what you're seeing, is very developed area with the stores, and around the right side of this little bay is the hotel. Can you see my arrow? I'm going to say, I hope you can, because
yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you. So when we came into Window, we came in here and we did a hike like that with the other guys. We came in here with my son first. What we did was came through this way, went up here, came back down here, and then we walked. The last day we walked 13 miles out, and you know, there's a lesson to be here if you're with a son and let him plan, or probably a daughter too, if you let them plan the trip. 13 miles. And I kept thinking, well, you know what, that's going to encourage me to walk a lot before this, to carry the pack, to get in shape to do that. And I now know that 13 miles is my limit, carrying 45 pounds. And I'll tell you a little bit about the hike. And then when I was with my wife, the trip was the same landing spot. And what we did is came to this campground and stayed there 3 days, and then did day pack of trips to the other places in and out. And that was very enjoyable. Now you can also, the park rangers will boat you to some of these places on the shoreline. So you can take your backpack, and it'd be a great thing for a family, and they'll take you out there, they'll dump you on that spot, and they'll come pick you up in 2 or 3 or 4 days, whatever. And then you don't have to, if you have little kids or if you know you have feet problems of some sort, then there's something for you to do there. I'm not used to doing programs without getting feedback, either, you know, watching people's body language or hearing them. I'm giving it to myself. So beautiful bays there. There's every night and every morning, there's beautiful skies. A little different shoreline on the east side than on the west side. I love big waters. I love the rocks, and I think there are a lot of moose still. I don't know what the number is, but when we're on the boats, all of them are talking about how they got skunked. So I'd like to think maybe we're lucky with seeing the moose, because we saw 5-6 moose every time I've been out there. And what a great animal! Just nothing like it. We are told that they don't have very good eyesight, and that they will charge you, and then they tend to, I guess, like elephants, they stomp on you. That didn't sound like a good idea. And they say what you do is you hide behind trees, because they don't know that you're hiding behind trees. Well, that's all fine and dandy if there's a tree to hide behind, because we came up on one that was in the shrubs and there were no trees. And I was nervous. My son wanted to take all the pictures, and he took all the pictures, and we walked wide around it, and it was all okay. But I have heard stories of them charging people. There again, these bogs are full of these nice walkways that you balance your way across. Again, we saw these wonderful pink lady slippers, just gorgeous. Up on the green stone ridge, views just, you don't want to walk, you just want to sit down and take it all in. I'm sure you all have been some places like this. Wood lily, which is rare around here, but the 2 trips we did on the East Island, we saw them every day. These creeping junipers all over the place. My shirt says positive forward, but you can see the backpack. It's a day pack, water, some treats, maybe a lunch if we're going to be out all day. The Monarch Whisperer. There are a lot of different kinds of butterflies up there, at least when we were there. Beaver dam blowout. This was a lake, we have been told, and the beaver dam blew out, and it just, all the water flowed out of this area. And later on that summer, I had read where some moose actually got stuck in the mud, and they were able to get one out, but not the other. For an old guy with balance issues, these things are tricky. So I promised to take a picture of my wife as she was going to do it. I think by now you figured out Don Miller likes vistas, water, trees. So one of our spots we stayed at, these are these huts, and we needed some water. This is like 9 o'clock in the morning. And so we went to the water to filter some water, fill up our water bottles. We came back, there's Bessie sitting there right out there. It's not like they're going to steal your food or anything, but she was in no hurry to move, and she didn't really care that we were a safe distance away from her. So we got to study her for a long time. And I have heard people getting stuck in these huts because there's a moose outside and they don't want to leave. Pitcher plants, I didn't expect to see them, but I read they were there, so didn't see any of the first trips. So we made a special trip to make sure we saw them. And I'd never seen, I've been over to Volleybog close to us, but I've never timed it to be there when they're in bloom. And I like to think that they've been prettier if my fat, hairy hand had not been in the picture, but my wife says it gives it all, a size element to it. I think she's being kind. Amazing stuff. All kinds of grass pinks, another one of the orchids, I believe, that's up there. And this is that other iris that I actually found in nursery. A Prairie Moon Nursery sells these, and so I bought some clumps, and they spread, but boy, they're just beautiful small little iris. You've seen this enough to know what that one is. But we saw the yellows as well. More wood lily. Again, there's a real plus by having your wife into the wildflowers and having the cell phone with the better camera and maybe a stronger back to bend over and take all these pictures. So there you go. I'm not abusing her. She chooses to do this. And again, the mixture of plants and these little things you just like to frame. Harebells there with the reindeer lichen, just gorgeous. You're supposed to leave everything where you found it. So I can't tell you how many thousands of people have picked up this antler and taken a picture of it, but why not, right? gigantic. Some people bring them back to the entry sign, and so there's a pile of them at the entry sign. But I like, you know, it's something fun about when you're hiking and you come across this, even if you know a bunch of people have discovered it before you. That is the end. And I did, just for fun, put in one of my favorite Far Side. If a tree falls in the forest and no one's around and it hits a mime, does anyone care? So Gary, if you would unmute, I'd be glad to hear other people's stories of their travels or other questions that you might have or something I left out.
Everybody now has the ability to unmute themselves. I had a couple of questions while people are trying to figure out what they want to ask you, because I'm sure there are maybe some other questions, but one of the things, a couple of things. First of all, it looks like it's an area that's very wet, must get a lot of rainfall. Is that, you know, your understanding?
Yeah, I think it's probably seasonal, and there are low parts. Like what, if you remember that first, the picture that I had two maps on, when you see those series of ridges, the rain drains down into the valleys on those places. So those places are very, very wet, but the ridges are very, very dry.
Okay. And then you also indicated that it's the least visited. I know that some of our national parks, especially over the last year or so, have seen a tremendous amount of usage. In fact, there's a tremendous amount of overusage. And so the question I have is, I mean, is there a reservation process in place?
You know,
is it an area that just there's not a lot of visitors and therefore it's not that hard to get into?
The only way you can get there is by seaplane or one of these three ferries. And whether just the numbers that they can actually get across on a daily basis keeps it in check. I'm trying to think, Gary, and I don't remember whether we actually had to have our campsites reserved, and we might have had, and I don't know if anybody else has been up there can help me remember there. The last time we went was 2018, and you have to have your ferry pass fairly early on, but I don't remember having my camping permit ahead of time. So I can't tell you that. I just think it's one of those things where a lot of people think it's a backpacking place where you can stay at the hotel, which probably isn't cheap, and have all the comforts of home, of showers and the restaurant, and you know, there's a little kitchenette in there, and then you can, this only on the east end, and you can do all these day hikes, and that then leads you to how far you can hike as far as how far you can go. So it's not like it's a place you have to backpack.
Okay.
So I'm not sure I really answered, except for to tell you, I don't know.
Okay. And when's a good time to go? I mean, a good time, a bad time? I mean, you talked about mosquitoes and
yeah, I guess
things like that. I mean, that's certainly something that's gonna.
I think it closes the 1st of October.
Oh, really?
And yeah, and I'm not sure when it opens. We went 3rd week of June, 1st week of July, and 2nd week of July, and only one of those trips we have that downpour rain. And again, that's not something I have the memory, but I know we looked at weather conditions during that time, highs and mostly lows. But you know, mosquitoes, I think if you go up to northern Wisconsin, Minnesota, the UP, and you're there in late June, there's a good chance that mosquitoes are gonna be there. So that's the only thing I can tell you, is that's when we went, and I've done it 3 times. So either, you know, what they say about if you do something and get the same results 3 times, you're insane. But I enjoyed it each time. So I'm gonna say that's the best time to go, but I don't know. And there are things that you can Google that somebody has decided what the best time is to go. I enjoy the orchids when they're blooming up there, and I'm sure throughout the whole summer there's something lush blooming though.
What were the temperatures like?
What was that?
What were the temperatures like there in June?
So we had a couple days in the 90s, which was unusual. And I think if I were to look, I'm going to tell you it's probably 70, low 70s, and possibly lows of 50, 45 at night.
Okay.
Pretty, pretty fantastic stars at night.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's a dark sky. It's for those that have gone to the Bounty Waters when there's no light. You know, if you're in closer to the hotel, there's certainly some lights that it wouldn't be quite that way. I guess something I didn't mention was my wife and I we walked to this, it's called Daisyfield Camp, which is like 6 miles from the drop off at Rock Harbor. And that's where we did like our 3-day stay. And on Wednesdays, Ralph Peterson, the wolf biologist, and his wife, they live on a little island off the main island. They canoe over and they do this impromptu program about the wolf study, and they bring moose bones and skulls and wolf, or it was just fabulous. And you know, I don't know whether it's a secret or if you look deep enough, I would have known that they're there Wednesday, but it wasn't a very big crowd, and it's just this campground that, like I say, maybe 5 or 6 campers can be there. So that was just a bonus ticket to meet them and hear them talk about, you know, 50, 60 years of moose wolf research they've been doing.
Well, it's interesting on the chat. I noted that Fran Shriver is currently in Thunder Bay, Ontario.
Right across the bay from Isle Royale. We could see it off in the distance this morning from up on the hill, looking across the bay.
Nice.
Now, I wonder, did you see the Aurora Borealis while you were there?
No.
Okay.
You know, I'm always on the lookout for that and want to see it. I've seen it, you know, I grew up in Rockton, and I've seen it from my house in Rockton twice,
Whoa.
once on One Center Road. But anytime I've been up in the North Woods, I've been shut out.
Yeah, same here. Same. We've been to Thunder Bay a few times. Same thing.
There's always that hope, and it's never a bad time to be out there looking for it, but you kind of like to see it.
Yeah.
I'm always surprised when you're really in the dark sky how many shooting stars happen when there's not, you know, we go out when there's these shooting star showers, you know, to see shooting stars, but they're happening all the time. It's just that we don't see them unless we're in a really dark sky and being, you know, just laying there watching. But that was fun.
Yeah.
So does anybody else have any questions that they wanted to either write on the chat, or you can, you know, unmute yourself and ask Don?
I think I'm on. This is Molly, and I wondered if you saw any wolves or bears, or if bears are even there.
No bears, and that's nice. So you don't have to hang your food there, and no raccoons. There are chipmunks, and there's a couple of places that the one trip we were warned about a fox that was getting friendly, and he would, you know, lots of times if you're in one of those sheds or your tent, you leave your boots outside, not bring them in, and this fox would take off with people's boots. So that's not something you really want to have happen. Unfortunately, there's no bears and there's no poisonous snakes. And so there is, you know, there is something about sleeping in bear country, and that it keeps you a little bit different alert, but you don't have to worry about those kind of things there. We did not see wolves and we did not hear wolves. But while we were there from 2011, 2016, and 2018, the wolf population was like 2 to 3 or 4 wolves. Where now I think they're actually seeing wolves occasionally and probably hearing them more often, because I think the population is 16 to 20 wolves on there.
Wow.
I've never been a place. I've been places where wolves are, and we go out and we listen for wolves. And I was with Richard once in a cold January day in the northern woods that we were with a group, and we took out in the middle of nowhere, and it was quiet, and the guy was a wolf expert, and he was calling wolves, and we still didn't get any wolves. So that's a bucket list thing for me.
Right. Let me, I'm going to stop the recording here quick.